The rain was so heavy it looked like the sky was angry at someone. My name is Taidy. I'm 8 years old, and I was watching my mistake drift away with the river. Grandpa's boat drifted further and further away. Taidy said, "Grandpa's boat is gone. I just wanted to help. I just wanted to prove that I was brave enough to be useful, brave enough to make everyone proud." But the former didn't care about a child's intentions. It swept everything away, including my confidence. The adult's voice competed with the rain. "Who will take responsibility?" Taidy said, her voice trembling. I thought I could." The word responsibility echoed in my ears, heavier than the thunder. When I untied the rope, I only thought that if I was brave, everything would be better. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my flesh. I wished everything could go back to before I untied the rope. But the river never flows backward, and mistakes are the same. But now I know that bravery, if not thought through carefully, can become a burden that others have to carry. The river never flows backward, and mistakes never give us a chance to correct them. No one scolded me immediately. That's what scared me the most. My grandfather sat still, saying nothing, so still that I wished he would just yell at me. Aunt Duan spoke in a low voice. "That boat isn't fully paid off yet." Uncle Chat, "How will the workers cross tomorrow?" The adult's conversation was hushed, but every word was as clear as a clap of thunder in my chest. It was then that I began to understand that the silence of the adults sometimes was heavier than being reprimanded. "Who will take responsibility?" I will." The word responsibility echoed repeatedly in my head. It wasn't just an ordinary word, it was the lives of the entire village. The workers who had to go to work, the mothers who had to take their children to the doctor, the families who waited for their daily income. I just realized that some action by one child could shake the entire community. And sometimes what we thought was courage could become a burden too heavy for a small heart to bear. I started to realize I was special, not because I thought it myself, but because the adults kept telling me, "This child must be the future of the village." Another one, "At least there's Taidy who's brave." Our village was poor. Young people moved to work in the city, leaving only the elderly and children, and I became a small hope that everyone wanted to grow up to replace what they had lost. I smiled as I should, but inside I felt heavier every day. One day, an official from the district came to the village. "If we want to develop, we must dare to change." He talked about development. He talked about the courage to change. His words sounded grand, as if a bright future was not far away. Then suddenly I was pushed to stand beside the stage. Uncle Chat turned and squeezed my shoulder tightly, then laughed. "Look, this child from our village is an example of courage." It was like placing hope in an 8-year-old child. That's when I realized that sometimes children aren't asked what they want to be, but I was placed where the adults wanted me to be. I smiled, but my chest grew heavy. I don't want to be an example for anyone. I just want everyone to be proud of me. I don't want to be the future of the village. I just want Grandma to smile. I want the adults to nod with pride. Maybe I'm not brave because I want to be. I'm brave because I'm afraid of disappointing others. And that kind of bravery often takes a child too far for their small heart to bear. The afternoon before the incident, the adults were arguing about a new bridge. The district official said, If we have a bridge, we won't need to rely on boats anymore." The old man shook his head. "A bridge would cost a lot of money, and with this strong current, it might collapse." Another person immediately retorted, "If you don't dare to take risks, there will never be development." The words floated back and forth like a ball no one wanted to let go of. The word development sounded beautiful. The word dare sounded cool. I sat listening quietly, but I began to notice that every time someone said the word dare, the other person would fall silent. It was as if an ordinary word was becoming some kind of weapon. Uncle Chat turned to me and asked, "If it were you, would you choose between waiting or taking action?" The question seemed playful, but the adult's eyes weren't. I answered immediately, "Take action." Several adults, "Haha, even a child knows," because I thought that taking action was the correct answer. Laughter erupted. I smiled along, but inwardly, a little confusion began to set in. I answered based on my own beliefs, or because I knew they wanted that kind of answer. "Just do it. I guess I really have to." At that time, I didn't know that an 8-year-old's answer was being used as a reason for an argument among adults. And the next day, I actually did it. Unbeknownst to me, I was playing the role they had cast me in. Sometimes politics isn't just confined to boardrooms. It's in ordinary words that push someone to believe they have to be brave, even if they're not ready. As the boat slowly drifted away from the shore, I heard people shouting for me to turn back. "Come back!" But in my head, a voice in my head said, "Turning back now means losing." Another voice was louder. It said, "If I back down now, everything the adults believed in me will disappear." I wasn't sure whose voice it was. Maybe it was mine, or maybe it was all the praise I'd received. The current pounded harder against the boat. I tried to resist. I tried to control it. I can do it. I have to do it. I used to think that if our hearts were strong enough, everything would go our way. But the river didn't care about the determination of an 8-year-old. It didn't care about courage. It didn't care about proof. It just flowed according to its own force. It taught me in the cruelest way. The boat spun wildly. The oar flew out of my hand. Taidy trembling. "No, not like this." At that moment, I wasn't as afraid of dying as I was about to prove that the adults were wrong to believe in me. I just understood that nature never promises a second chance, and reckless boldness can take us too far to turn back. After the situation calmed down, the elders from the district left with a short statement. District official: "This is the result of a lack of management." Villagers whispered, "Because of that boat incident." The words weren't spoken loudly, but they carried weight, like my fault becoming evidence to be used to reprimand my grandfather. I stood listening, not daring to look up. I sat silently, leaning against the wooden wall, hearing a conversation the adults thought a child wouldn't understand. Uncle Chat spoke in a strained voice. "Outsiders say we're backward, afraid to develop." My grandfather replied calmly, "Braveness without a plan is no different than pushing someone into the water." Suddenly, I understood something. The word courage was spoken with different tones. For politicians, it was a fancy word on stage. For the poor in the village, it was a risk they had to pay for themselves. And for me, it was a lesson learned at the cost of the village's humiliation. It was then that I began to realize that a single word could have different prices depending on who was paying for it. That night, I dreamed. I was rowing the boat alone. There was no praise, there was no applause, only the voice of my own heart remains. Am I brave, or am I just afraid no one will love me? I don't know. It keeps asking itself, Is what I call courage actually fear that no one will be proud of me? And that might be a question more terrifying than a raging river. That night, the pavilion was brighter than usual, but the atmosphere was heavier than the storm that day. I hid behind a wooden post, trying to make myself as small as possible. Uncle Chat spoke sternly. "The boat is gone. The income is gone. Who will compensate?" Aunt Dune sighed. The child wanted to be too clever. The word compensate floated softly into my mind, but it made my heart race. I began to understand that one mistake didn't just affect me, it affected everyone sitting around that table. Grandpa's voice was slow but steady. The child wasn't the only one who wanted to be clever. It's the adults who like to applaud when the child takes risks. No one argued. The silence in the pavilion was louder than an argument. I bowed my head until my chin trembled. For the first time, I realized that courage doesn't come from a child alone. Sometimes it's nurtured by the applause of adults, and when they fail, the child is the one standing at the front, bearing all the brunt of it.
The market was as vibrant as ever, but the large shop in the middle was eerily closed. My grandfather took me closer to see. A "for sale" sign fluttered gently in the wind. "Why is this shop closed?" Grandfather explained that the shop owner believed the saying, "If you don't dare to grow, you'll be poor your whole life." I looked at the tightly closed iron door and felt like it was telling a story. Taidy asked softly, "And now?" Grandfather replied, "Now he has neither the shop nor the house, and no one to hold that promise accountable." I stared at the fluttering "for sale" sign. Suddenly, I understood something. I and that shop owner were more alike than I thought. We both believed in the word courage, without considering the true cost. I lost the boat, but he lost the life he had built. The only difference was the magnitude of the loss. I asked my grandfather again, "How do we know how much courage is enough?" Grandfather smiled faintly. "When our decisions don't shift the burden to others, that's when it's enough." Grandfather's answer wasn't flashy, no flowery words, but powerful words. I've just realized that true courage isn't about jumping first, but about seeing the whole picture and knowing who will bear the consequences of that jump. Perhaps growing up begins with realizing that not every encouragement to be brave will always lead us to a better place. I approached the villagers one by one. My voice trembled, but I didn't back down. "I'm sorry." Think more carefully next time." Some nodded, some simply looked and remained silent. That silence hurt more than being scolded, because it said that some of the trust had not returned, and I had to restore it through my actions. That night, I sat beside my grandfather. A gentle breeze blew. The questions lingering in my heart flowed with tears. If I could turn back time, would you have stopped me more forcefully? My grandfather was silent for a long time. Then he replied, "I would have taught you to think before you dared." My grandfather didn't blame me. He simply said that if he were to teach me again, he would teach me to think before I dared. It was then that I understood that true courage isn't about being fearless, but about daring to stop and consider the consequences first. And sometimes, a sincere apology is the greatest act of courage in life. Months passed. The new boat was finished. This time, I didn't rush to ask to row myself. I asked first, learned first, listened first. Should I try rowing here first? Very good. Listen to the current first, then move. I began to understand that preparation is part of courage. On a calm day, Grandpa, today you are ready. I will row slowly. Grandpa handed me the oar. My hands were still small, but my mindset was different. I was still brave, but not impulsive. I knew now that being overly brave would lead to trouble, not just for myself, but for the whole society around me. That day, I rowed slowly. Slow, but steadily. There were no shouts of urging, no pressure, only the smiles of the whole village. Villagers. Very good, Taidy. Taidy, smiling softly. I'm just rowing according to what I've learned. True courage is not about rushing to prove yourself, but about thinking about the consequences. And I dared to accept the truth. The ship slowly sailed forward, like me, growing up, quietly. And this time, I could smile without having to prove anything to anyone anymore.
Months later, a new boat was built, with the help and money of the entire village. I helped lift the wood, hammered the nails, helped with everything an 8-year-old could. Villagers, hold that piece of wood tight, Taidy. Taidy, yes, I'll help as much as I can. I was still a brave child, but now I always act before thinking. I knew that if I was too brave, the trouble didn't stop with me. It flowed away like the water I once let go of. And sometimes the cost of the lesson was more expensive than a child should have to pay. One morning, I rowed slowly beside my grandfather. The water was calm, the wind was gentle, and my heart was calm too. Grandfather, the water is nice today. Taidy, I'll row just right. I finally understood that true bravery isn't about rushing to prove yourself, but about stopping to think before the whole village cries because of you. The boat sailed forward steadily, like my new kind of bravery. The bravery to think, the bravery to take responsibility, and the bravery to grow.